Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about 3 unsolved missing persons cases from across Texas. We have everything from a grandmother who is involved in a DV situation who disappears after work, to a husband who leaves home in the middle of the night with his dogs, to a troubled teen in the 90s who vanished without a trace, and it seems like no one really cared what happened to him. I want to continue my series on lesser talk missing persons cases, but just because they're lesser known doesn't make them any less mysterious or any less important. So let's get into them. 64-year-old Pauline Diaz was a beloved mother and grandmother who spent the last 5 years making tortillas at a grocery store in San Antonio, Texas called H-E-B. She started as a greeter and made her way up to the bakery, which is a position that she was really liking. Pauline's family would describe her as helpful and kind. But at the time of her disappearance, Pauline was in the process of divorcing her husband, Pete. And on several occasions, Pauline had to be escorted to her vehicle after work due to altercations with her soon-to-be ex-husband. December 7th of 2010 was seemingly a normal day for Pauline. And that day, she was scheduled to work her usual shift at H-E-B. At 2:30 p.m. that day, surveillance would capture Pauline walking towards her 2010 white Toyota Tacoma. Then she's seen walking around her truck with an unknown woman as if they were examining it. This would be the last sighting of Pauline, who would go missing after this. Now, unsurprisingly, police would end up speaking to Pete because he was in the middle of a tumultuous divorce with his wife. And he would end up telling police that Pauline was actually supposed to show up to his home that day to pick up a lawnmower, but according to him, she never came. Now, this would turn out to be in fact a lie, and Pauline actually did go to his home that day, meaning Pete was the last person to see his soon-to-be and now missing ex-wife alive. The next day, Pauline's vehicle would be located in Floresville, Texas, on Highway 818 and FM 320, which just happened to be down the road from Pete's home. When police ended up examining the vehicle, they would end up finding Pauline's purse under the driver's seat, which is never a good sign. Now, as you've probably gathered, police have suspected that Pete had something to do with his wife going missing. And after Pauline went missing, Pete ended up doing a number of suspicious things, including contacting her insurance broker to inquire about her life insurance. Now, it turns out that Pete actually wasn't the beneficiary of her life insurance, which pissed him off. And in my opinion, it's kind of giving he tried to kill her because he was pissed off that she was trying to divorce him. And in my opinion, it seems like he thought doing that would give him money from her life insurance, but she had changed it and he was not, in fact, the beneficiary. So thankfully, he did not get any money. Now, investigators would eventually excavate his property, but they would end up finding nothing. Another really odd fact about this case is that Pauline's shoes were actually found back at her own house, but there was sand stuck to them, which was the same sand from Pete's house. There was also articles of clothing scattered around Pauline's home, which was apparently very uncharacteristic of her. She was a grandmother that liked to keep a very tidy home. So it seems, in my opinion, that police think that possibly Pauline had gone home, maybe Pete followed her back home, and that's where something happened, or he did something to her at his house, put her shoes and stuff back home, moved her vehicle, and then kind of went through her house trying to find things possibly. But nothing else has really come of Pauline's disappearance, and it's been about 13 years now. And we do talk a lot about younger people going missing and middle-aged people going missing, but we don't often talk about grandparents. Pauline has many generations of family that miss her and they want to bring her home and figure out what happened to her. She was loved and trying to get out of a very bad relationship, and she just wanted to start her new life. But unfortunately, someone took that away from her. There's currently a $25,000 reward offered to anyone that has information that leads to Pauline's whereabouts or the persons responsible for her disappearance. If anyone has any information on Pauline's disappearance, please contact CrimeStoppers. I'll have their information linked down below. Our second case today is going to be on Eric Thomas Alvarado. On November 20th of 2018, 32-year-old Eric Alvarado would go missing from the small city of Atlanta in northeastern Texas. Atlanta has a population of 5,600 residents, and it's only about an hour away from Shreveport, Louisiana. At the time of his disappearance, Eric was a talented tattoo artist who was looking to open up his own shop. He went to art school in Dallas on a full scholarship and was pursuing his dream. He had 2 dogs, a wife named Samantha, and was very close to his 3 stepchildren. Eric was actually also 6'7". He was a really big guy, but he was described as a big teddy bear who had a great heart and would do anything for anyone. His father saying that he would, and I quote, give the shirt off his back, give you his last dollar, end quote. However, that November, things would change. According to Eric's father and brother, he began to act kind of strange around the time of his disappearance. And on the day of his disappearance, things would be even stranger. According to Atlanta police, at 1:30 a.m. that night, Eric would leave his home with his 2 pit bulls to drive to the store. We don't know what store it was. We don't know why he was leaving in the middle of the night to go to the store. However, we do know that Eric would never make it home. His wife would end up finding the front door of the home left wide open. The screen door would also be wide open. And Eric, the dogs, the vehicle were all missing.
The front door was wide open. The screen door was wide open. The dogs were gone, he was gone, the Jeep was gone. We just need him home. That's the only thing.
It was also noted that he left his cell phone behind. And it would only be 45 minutes later when Samantha would call police. Now, that has been heavily scrutinized, why she would call the police so soon. Honestly, I don't know really the details of what store he was going to. If he was just going to the store maybe down the road, I don't know why he'd bring the dogs with him. But also, if he was just supposed to be going to a store close by that would take 5 minutes and it took him 45 minutes, he didn't bring his cell phone, everything was left like that. Honestly, I would call the police if my husband disappeared like that. But again, we don't have that information. But here's where things would get weirder. Later that day, Eric's black Jeep would be located 50 miles away in Ogden, Arkansas, abandoned and out of gas on the side of Highway 71. It's also alleged that keys and possibly a shoe were located either in the vehicle or near the vehicle, but those details were never confirmed. And the Jeep would end up being processed and returned to Samantha, but no information has been released on that. Now here's the thing. Eric's brother Matt would end up rounding out some cousins, and they would end up driving down to Texas to help search for his brother. And when they arrived, they found a lot of things that were very suspicious to them. Matt alleges when he went to Samantha to ask about Eric's phone and wanting to see Eric's phone, Samantha told him that she had tried the password too many times and it basically reset itself because she put in the wrong password. I've also seen that police had taken this phone and tried processing it, but again, I didn't see any information on that. When the group ended up going to the area where Eric's Jeep was found to do some investigating of their own, they actually ended up finding Eric's 2 pit bulls dead near where the vehicle was. And it was said that they suspected the dogs were ran over, they were shot, they had cuts on them. And again, nothing has really come from finding Eric's dogs dead, but it does not look good. Why would he be missing and his 2 dogs would be found dead near the vehicle? And also, how didn't the police find these 2 dogs? I've also seen other things mentioned online, such as that the lead investigator on the case was actually friends and a neighbor of Eric and Samantha, and that this was a big conflict of interest. However, apparently he's not part of the investigation anymore. It also seems that the family believes that something happened to Eric that night, that he was possibly murdered, that there was foul play involved, and that all of this was some big cover-up. But at this time, there are no suspects in Eric's disappearance. There's no evidence really, and according to police, and I quote, "We've interviewed everyone that's been called in or we've received tips on or received information about, and there's nothing we can move forward with or substantiate that has been developed out of any of that," end quote. This is a really strange one. Why would Eric leave home in the middle of the night with his 2 dogs to go to the store and then just end up 50 miles away in another state? His vehicle ran out of gas, his dogs are killed on the side of the road, and he's just gone. Also, why would he leave his cell phone behind to do all of that? There's definitely, in my opinion, something going on in this case, and I'm surprised it's not a bigger case. Why were his dogs killed? Why was his vehicle out of gas? Where was he going that night if he did leave the house? But again, there really isn't that much information. We just know that he's vanished, and there seems to be nothing coming of it. But in my opinion, it seems like he most likely might have been harmed. But he was a really big guy. Who could overpower someone like that? Why would someone do something to him? He seemed like an all-around great guy who was a promising tattoo artist. He had dreams, he had plans, he was going to open up his own shop. So what happened to him? Eric would be 37 this year. He stands 6'7" at 280 pounds and is of Hispanic descent with black hair and brown eyes. His body is covered in tattoos such as the words Spanish blood on his neck, a large cross on his back. His last name is also above his navel, along with countless other identifiable ones. If you see Eric or have any information on his disappearance, please contact the Atlanta, Texas Police Department. I'll have all their information linked down below. Our last case today is going to be on a disappearance of a 17-year-old boy from El Paso, Texas, a city right on the border of Mexico. In 1997, 17-year-old Stephen Sean Austin was a kid who probably had a lot on his plate and a lot he was dealing with. He was on probation from juvenile detention, and he was also known to abuse alcohol. What led him down this path that got him into trouble is unknown. Also, the reason he went to juvie is unknown. Stephen was also said to have suffered from both heart issues, sinus problems, and he also had asthma. I also read that Stephen was said to have had scars on the left and right sides of his neck. So what happened to him to cause scarring on the sides of his neck? It really makes me wonder what was happening to him, the situation he was growing up in. It didn't seem to be good, but I don't really have information on that, so I could be wrong. On August 18th of that year, Stephen would end up meeting with his probation officer for the first time. And the next day, on August 19th, there are multiple different accounts of when Stephen was last seen. In one account, he was last seen leaving his residence at the 9500 block of Sims, where he lived with his parents, and this was in the early morning hours, and he's suspected to have left to be going to school. In another sighting, he was last seen at his home at 11 p.m. that day. There's sadly not much information on Stephen or his case, which again is really sad because this is a 17-year-old boy who went missing. A child. No matter what he was struggling with or what he was going through, he's still a missing kid. And it doesn't really seem, in my opinion, that anyone really did much to find him. Now again, I could be wrong and the police department might have done a lot, but considering the times back then and he was a black young male who was getting into trouble, I feel like the police weren't really doing much. Again, I could be wrong. Now, in 1999, a cousin would end up reporting a sighting of Stephen, which would have been 2 years after he went missing. However, the sighting was never confirmed, and no one else has heard from him since he disappeared in 1997. Again, Stephen is of African-American descent. He was 6'1" and around 138 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He would be in his early 40s at this point, and with age progression photos, we can see how they depicted he would look nowadays. Considering there's no leads that are known to the public and there's not really much information on Stephen's case, I honestly can't even begin to speculate what could have happened to him. It could be everything from he was kidnapped and killed to he's being held hostage to this very day or been put into human trafficking, or he possibly got involved in something that he shouldn't have, considering he was, in juvie and out drinking all the time. It seems like he was making bad decisions. So he could have gotten involved in something that he shouldn't have, and that, ended in his demise. Despite him, making bad decisions, he should still be talked about. His case still should be looked into. And just as I said earlier, we don't really look into grandparents' cases. We also don't look into cases like this where, troubled teens or people that are, lesser in life. Maybe they're in the sex trade industry or they're homeless. We don't look into cases as much of missing people that are involved in things like this because they're kind of pushed to the wayside. But Stephen deserves to be talked about. His picture deserves to be out there. He was only 17 years old, and he deserves to have somebody out there looking for him. But again, this case is one that seems to have been neglected. If you have any information on the disappearance of Stephen, I will have information linked down below for you to contact the appropriate authorities. So how do you all feel about these 3 cases? Again, I wanted to cover some cases that were lesser talked about, but also in categories we don't often talk about, such as grandparents or children who are making wrong decisions. So let's have a chat about all 3 of these cases down below. Pauline, Eric, and Stephen all deserve for people to be talking about them and looking for them. And if you have any other information on their cases, let's talk about it because I'm very interested. With that, if you have any other cases that you want me to look into and cover, let me know down below as well. And if you're enjoying this series of me talking about lesser known missing persons cases, also let me know because it'll motivate me to make more of these. There are hundreds of thousands of names out there of people that are missing that no one knows about. And I definitely want to continue doing this series. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I will see you in the next video.